Excerpt from Autobiography of a Yalic Vanguard concerning the Irony Wars, the first major galactic conflict. Copyright Bolivicero Publishing Bureau, 2763. Any attempt to copy this publishing for profit without direct consent of the BPB will result in a fine of 400 standard credits and a first-tier galactic crime marker, as well as any local penalty. You have been warned. Contact a regional enforcer for information on the Second Galactic Agreement. We were always told humanity was a cold, savage, brutally efficient race. And it was known as true, for there was proof. We heard of when they slaughtered 11 million of their own, like animals, just to better one man's political power. We heard of countless deaths due to endless conflict between their own species. The swift elimination of everything in their path. We thought they were monsters, for we were told it was so. I suppose this was a white lie. Successful propaganda is always based on truth. It made sense. Most of us enlisted to stop a terror that was humanity. But there is always more to the truth. We first contacted humanity in what is known as the Great Contact. This period was marked when most of the major cultures in the galaxy developed quantum communications and reached out across galaxy. We found each other still nestled in our respective systems. You see, instant communication was developed far before common FTL travel. For a time, faster-than-light travel was universally deemed impossible. Even the humans, the great achievers they are, believed this for a while. However, one human knew better. Rakesh Singh knew that mathematics, the great founder of progress, now held it back. Conventional math constrained, so the human forged into the irrational, disregarding the bonds of logic that had been created by his predecessors. At the expense of vast amounts of resources and his own sanity, he achieved the impossible, the irrational, the FTL engine. It was humanity, refined. Their greatest neglected gift, creativity, finally being used to reach the summit of their achievement. Possibly only by the unique flaws being a human could offer. It was not long until my species first saw them face to face. Harmless until we began to talk. Now, you may think we were already talking to the humans. But that is untrue. For there is a difference between communicating and talking. When we contacted them through quantum communicators, only the strictest information passed through their, and admittedly our, governments. No culture, no background, no history was shared. When those first humans let slip of real tongue, we were horrified. Genocides, war, greedy negligence, all passed through the barrier that was tightly controlled communication. And what was once a hole in the dam became a gaping maw of humanity's dark past. As we learned more about humanity, the more we hated the notion of it, for we regarded ourselves as guardians of peace. Before they had a chance to rectify their name, we cut them off. Quantum links were slashed, and trade was forbidden. For a century, bad blood brewed. Opposite ideals became sin, evil acts exaggerated, until our own dam broke. Jingoist angers broke forth, and a century's worth of concentrated hate was directed on the nearest human colony, Armistice 4. It was a massacre. Defenseless and quiet, it was vigorously combed by bloodthirsty soldiers until the streets ran the red of their blood. Including I, a new recruit lusting for the glory of slaughtering humans. I realized after that, if we were true guardians of peace, I, and countless others like I, would have never joined that war band. But of course, it was too late. Events were already set in motion. We wondered why it took humanity so long to respond. After all, they were the ones who knew how to wage war. The answer was sickening. Far from the radical propaganda our government had boasted, humans were not in fact prepared for a bloody war. They were no longer slaughtering each other by the millions. They were not the hated thing we developed a distaste for. When our preemptive scouts returned, they told of a marvelous world in which isolation and unification had bred peace and prosperity. Irony in its highest form. We grieved for them and for what we had become. A terror began to slowly trickle through. Our grief fermented and created a torrent. Before long, the propaganda started. A funny thing, propaganda. It twists the soul and corrupts the mind. In those few months, it bent our sorrow and regret into feral emotions of fear and aggression. The rationality we held so dear into the irrational. Again, the irony was thick. What had brought greatness in humans seemed to drive us to our lowest point, irrationality. The conflict of ideals, the conflict of irony, what hypocrites we were. Although humans had established a society based on peace, they had not forgotten their grim beginnings. While we braced for the inevitable blow, humanity once again rekindled its ancient predisposition towards war. They were even better than us in rallying troops, for they did not advertise the glory of it. They had learned their lesson. No, humanity fought because it was furious, enraged. Our slaughter of their colonists broke their old rules of war they had disregarded ever so often. And now, we had truly poked the beast in slumber. For 2 of their years, we waited in apprehension, and in 2 years, they restructured their society on their old, hated principle. War. It took 10 months to collect a third of their Orc cloud, and another 10 to build the largest war fleet the galaxy had ever seen. No great feat, for this war was the first of its kind. Sure, there were minor squabbles for star systems, but never something this large. This wasn't for some system, but for an entire species, an entire ideology. From the stardust would emerge a single victor. The humans were determined to make it themselves. From their ornate cities came weapons of mass destruction. Of their splendid capitals, deadly machines. They had not forgotten how to conduct their ancient sport. They struck us with a fist of cold steel and hot gas. They took no interest in colonies or outposts. In the vastness of space, these were trivial. There was no line. Only our world and theirs. I remember the day, looking up, seeing a multitude of short, tiny orange and yellow specks peppering the sky, like stars appearing violently, only to vanish immediately after. These were their kinetics, horrifying things. As a surface vanguard, I knew what these things did, and did well. Rather than burn and melt like our energy weapons tended to do, these commanded complete destruction. Projectiles, you could only see how they began, in a flash of the loudest thunder, and their grisly end, as they buried themselves in, or vaporized your comrade. No telltale blue streaks. Only the sound, like some deadly insect. You hope. Those things kill before you can hear them. Ever try and dodge anything you cannot hear nor see, before it's too late. And their tactics. From their past, they learned a hard lesson, one we learned quickly, as we fought them on the surface. War is not fair. And they didn't play it that way. You'd better hope humans don't have an inkling of where you're positioned. They'd either overwhelm you, outgun you, or kill you, before you knew they were there. Personally, I saw a fellow vanguard, isolated, swarmed by over 20 troops. The fool, he fought to the bitter end. Have you ever seen their machines of war? Lumbering behemoths of titanium and rubber that ignore buildings. Swarms of nanites that rend the flesh. I have. Shining cylinders that flatten cities. Small flying squares that can send 50 men to their graves. Yes, I have. Where's the glory in that, you ask? There is none. In their opinion, there is no glory at all. They hate war. Why is humanity so good at it, you ask? It is because it's in their blood. They were created by war, shaped by it. It is their substance, yet they struggle against it. If they didn't, it would consume them, as it almost has in their past. When they don't, however, the results are terrifying. So, when we razed their colony and slaughtered their citizens, they forgot how to control that primal urge. They made planetfall only after a 2-week battle above the sky. It would have been quick had we not expected their blitzkrieg, a strategy developed from one of their many intra-species conflicts. Before the humans could gain a proper foothold around both of our two moons, our massed fleet reacted and repelled their force long enough for additional Yaelic ships to arrive from the scattered colonies. For a week and a half, a steady stream of reinforcements bolstered our line at our closer moon, Nama. At the same time, human supply ships ran to resupply their massive fleet, clustered around our second, smaller moon, Menor. For what seemed like ages, a stalemate was reached. Weary human ships battling, although less in number, fresh Yaelic ships. Neither side seemed to dominate the orbit. It was unclear if it ever would happen. Ensigns came back, haunted from the destruction, suffering from an onslaught of paranoia. I met one while waiting for the long battle to be brought to the ground. Hegro. It has been a long span. Hegro spun faster than a trigger could be squeezed, and in a heart's beat, he had me by the neck. I will never forget the look of pure anxiety in his eye. Twitching, he exclaimed, "Oh, Veggio." Scanning the bar we were at again, he let out a burst of nervous laughter. "I thought you were." "I don't know what I thought you were." Brought out of my shock, I asked, "Are you all right?" "Probably not." I paused. "Well, do you want some vellum? You look like you need it," I said, looking his nerve-wracked frame over. "That sounds good." He continued to recount his experiences fighting the human ships. Unlike ours, they were moderately ornate, with various symbols and images painted on their sides. The most common being human headbones, their females in pose, and arrangements of 5-pointed polygrams. I then asked about their weapons. He shuddered and let one ominous sentence escape. "In space, you don't take prisoners." He was silent after that, and I never saw him again. I suppose no one did. Finally, they reached the surface. They came in droves, in squads, and in pairs. Massive deployments of millions of troops shook the ground as tens of thousands of sleek gray transports landed in unison. And your bones would shake when countless rubber boots carrying dense bodies stomped a swath across deserts, plains, and forest. Your very soul shook when they found a target. One day, that target was me. I was in the 329th Rajkal, the equivalent of 2.5 human platoons. That was tasked with defending Kioshko against an incoming onslaught in the form of 23 million pairs of rubber boots. It was a relatively even match, and with the defending position, we were confident we would succeed to hold the city. Offensive positions manned, we finally spotted the mass of troops, neatly organized into rows and columns, that never seemed to stop coming over the horizon. They dressed in green-gray textiles, blocks of armor that seemed impossible to carry. Their helmets, dull black and pocketed with the scars of previous battles, contained a sophisticated visor that glowed a gentle blue. As if that wasn't enough, thin strips of metal ran the length of their limbs and along their spine, which I learned later enhanced their already impressive strength and endurance. Quite simply, it was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. As they neared, I heard a terrible whistling. Veteran of other battles, I knew what this meant. I crouched pitifully and blocked my ears. A confused recruit looked down at me, and before I could warn him, a jagged piece of iron had made a home in his skull. A torrential downpour of explosive spheres buffeted my auditory sensors. When it ceased, I looked over the edge of the broken wall I took cover on. A sea of now charging humans greeted my eye. Escaping from everyone was an orange bloom of gunfire and a primal roar of rage. By this time, we had mostly recovered. White-hot plasma was flung from turrets along the wall, cutting down slews of humans at a time. Smoking holes appeared and gushed red, where beams of highly concentrated photons met flesh and steel. Yet, still they came on, some coming with half a face or limb. They didn't seem to die, unless completely annihilated, and fought with whatever they could spend, which was either their life or their consciousness. It was in that moment I knew that it was hopeless. Suddenly, a small cylinder with holes drilled in it appeared to my left, skidding along the cracked and blood-stained cement. Everything turned white and streaks of pain bolted through my brain, then black, as something thudded against my head. I awoke in a metal chair, in a small metal room, at a metal table, which had accumulated a fair amount of saliva from my open mouth. I looked around, and to my left, saw stars out a circular porthole. Realizing I was not restrained, I stretched my limbs and relaxed. I suppose I should have fought to escape, but for some reason, I chose not to. A few increments later, the metal door opened. My warrior instinct soared, but I dismissed them. What would I do? They didn't bring me to this place to die. Out from it strode a human male, clad in that same gray-green textile, but this time without the massive armor surrounding it. He sat down at the chair opposite of me and gave me a stare. I returned the favor. Oddly, I felt entranced by his soft eyes. The muscles inside them moved ever so slightly like an expanding pool. Unlike mine, which is hidden behind a wall of smooth transparent crystal. "You're the first one to not attack me today," the human said in my language, holding up a previously concealed stun rod in his hand. He dropped it on the table between us. Lazily, I shifted in my chair. Well, what would I have done? I am not stupid, human. He thoughtfully looked at me again, and I could almost see the mind working through those eyes. "That's a good start," he finally remarked. Intrigued, I asked, "Start to what?" He answered ambiguously. "Would you like to rebuild your people?" "Of course." The human paused. "Would you like to become the next hegemon?" I no longer sat idly in my chair. "Hegemon? I was shooting at you not a few degrees ago." "Rotations," the human corrected. "And we think that you're the right person for the job." I grew suspicious and leaned forward in the chair. "Why?" "You seem to be intelligent, capable of being a strong leader. And you decided to not attack when we met. All speak of qualities," the human drew a breath through his fleshy pink mouth. "We require." I knew where this was going. "Why do you want a Yalic hegemon? Surely you could raise the planet and establish a flourishing human colony." "We could," the human admitted. "But it is not of our preferred way. We do not enjoy that particular destruction." I tensed. "You certainly seemed to enjoy that kind of destruction during your world wars," I said coldly. The human's eyes flashed with a bright anger, then settled into a somber dullness. "You're right. Violence is at the very core of every human. We revel in it. But it does not mean we enjoy what we have done. Guilt is as strong as the glory of battle. We have made our mistakes, and we are not proud of them." He stiffened. "But so have you. We do not take well to injury." "We know. And I am sorry for them," I said dismissively. I leaned in. "But what is the real reason for letting us stay? Surely, it cannot be only for the goodness of your hearts." The human grinned, a predatory, worrisome thing. "You know us better than ourselves." "Very well. We need a foreign trade outlet. You see, our domestic market has grown stale, and the war has drained us a lot. We need the Yalic markets." "So, I am to become your puppet?" "Not at all. You may of course exercise sovereign power, but you must be prone to." He adopted a different tone and moved forward until we were, almost touching faces. "Suggestions?" "I see." Leaning back, I said. "So, another irony to top off this idiotic war, indeed." "Indeed." End of excerpt. For use outside of Yalic Human Joint Education or purchase of the source novel, please contact Bolivicero Publishing Bureau. Author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.